And now we are recording.
Sorry about that.
We had a number of people in the Cambridge area who are associated with ag, and also others who just wanted to learn a little bit more. So we started a series where we could have people come in. We'd offer beer and wine to come in, have networking time, and we intentionally set this up so that it was not a 40-minute talk on something. It's designed to get people together, network, and then we would have a topic. We'd select a topic with a guest speaker or two, talk for a few minutes, and go on to stimulate some conversation. Then we'd have some more networking, some more beer and some more wine, and a lot of connections were made that way. So, of course, in the age of COVID, we've gone to a virtual format. And what we found to work pretty well is to have a panel, have a type of a panel that we would allow people to talk a bit on a given topic or a given area. And then from there, we'd have some opportunities for questions. What you're going to find us doing today is that we have a panel from Leaps by Bayer. We're having a takeover by Leaps, and Ryan will tell you about that in a minute. So it's kind of a takeover of AgConnect. And those of you who might have gone out anytime to some bars or pubs know that you sometimes have a tap takeover where a brewery will come in, take over, and they'll feature their beers. Today we're having a takeover here by Leaps by Bayer, and we'll hear about that. You'll be hearing more about some of the topics that we have going forward through our LinkedIn page. So we run this currently through the Life Hub Boston LinkedIn page. So I encourage you to follow Life Hub Boston on LinkedIn. Follow me if you care to, and I'll be posting these as we go by, posting our opportunities as we go by. I'll also just lastly take this opportunity to highlight the Bayer Grants for Ag program, which we kicked off last week. Grants for Ag is basically a program where we give out award small grants between 5,000 and 15,000 euro to look at some new technologies, look at new areas of research, new researchers that we may or may not be connected to, as a way to do our tech scouting. So you can find Grants for Ag. Meredith, who is basically our operations lead at the hub and also for AgConnect, will be telling you, be posting, as she has in the chat here, where you can find out more information about Grants for Ag. She'll also be posting some other things as time goes by, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the housekeeping that we do. Later on, if time permits, we're going to go to open mic. Open mic is something that we had been doing live, which was kind of a lot of fun, and people would have the opportunity to come in and give a 1-minute pitch about something that interests them, about a project they're working on, about their company, and we'll see how that goes. That really hasn't gotten a lot of traction in this virtual environment, but if you'd care to come in at the end, if we have time, just type a note into the chat, and Meredith will make sure that you have the opportunity to do that. So with that, I'm going to see if Meredith has anything else she wishes to say.
I'll just kind of go over the few of the quick housekeeping things. I'm sure if you've been to this before, you've heard this whole spiel, but I'll go through it again. So my name is Meredith Roman, and I'm going to be moderating and taking care of all the technical stuff on this call. So that's why you cannot see me. I'm usually on mute, but I will be working in the background. So just to kind of, I'm sure we've all been in enough Zoom meetings, but just please make sure you're on mute unless you're asking a question or talking through the open mic or something, just to make sure everything's easy to hear. We'll start with introductions and then discussions from the panel members, and then we'll open up the floor to questions. And so if you have a question, there's a few different ways you can go about it. You can use the raise hand feature, which you can see under your participants menu, and I'll be able to call on you. You can unmute, or I can unmute you, either one, and you can just ask it to the panel. If for any reason you don't want to talk or can't talk out loud for audio reasons, you can just post your question in the chat, whether you put it in general or directly to me, and I can just kind of give it to the panel for you. And if you'd like to present for the open mic, of course, we'll have you also use the raise hand feature for that, or you can, again, put that in the general or personally to me chat, and I can make sure that you get your time. So back to you, Al. Oh, I'll also be posting the emails for our speakers in the chat, as well as a link to learn more about the Grants for Ag program. So if you want a little bit more information or access to those links or emails, make sure you check out the chat.
Thanks, Meredith. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Ryan, who's going to lead us through the rest of the program.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alan Meredith. So yeah, in the spirit of keeping this nice and casual, I only created a few slides just to sort of present some information, but very happy to have the conversation along the way. For today, as Al mentioned, we'll sort of walk through a little bit of LEAPS. I'd love to give you guys an introduction. Great to see some familiar faces, and I think we're on now 2 screens of Zoom. So I think we're close to almost 3, so that'll be a new one for me. So it's nice to see a total of 42 people attending. Very happy to keep follow-up discussions going after the session, of course, if that's easier to sort of connect directly. But I just wanted to take the session to say thank you. We'll spend about 10 minutes talking about LEAPS. I'll do a quick introduction for myself. Pass it over to Heather Hudson, head of commercial at Pairwise, one of the portfolio companies here at LEAPS, and then Steve Kahn as well for a similar walkthrough. New Leaf. And then, as Al said, we'll have general Q&A and then open mic. So, the intention was to provide a little bit of overview on LEAPS, but really focus more on Pairwise and New Leaf. So before we kick into a big part of LEAPS, just an introduction for myself. I'm the newer member of the team. PJ is also in the session, I think, on background. He's been part of a conference today, so he's just joining in to hear a bit more. I think he's been on with a headset for quite some time today. For me, I'm one of the 3 members of the crop science team on LEAPS, one of 4 members here in Boston. I'm located Metro West. My background is a very non-linear one, but hopefully it makes sense in terms of the LEAPS mission. I was actually born on a homestead farm, grew up about 800 acres of corn and soy, bit of alfalfa. We were the sort of homestead family that baled your ditches. So we were, sort of that thrifty homestead family. I grew up walking beans and corn, very happy to ride along with dad in the cultivator, was happy when Gen 2 John Deere's came through with air conditioning. So for those of you with the sort of roots in the Midwest, you realize it used to be all in the sun and quite hot for a lot of that work. Life is a lot different these days. And I, as a teenager, said, I don't want to go back into this ag family business thing. So I found my way to West Point as an economist and engineer. All West Point graduates are engineers, by the way, as part of that mission of the institution. Really ended up in a really fabulous time and space of the digital transformation of the Army. So I spent 5.5 years in the Army as an officer, really spent quite a bit of time on both terrestrial and aerial sensors. So what we think about today is big data, highly instrumented terrestrial and aerial sensor payloads. We were working with those back in the early days of 1995 when we were buying, for example, drones directly from Israel. And we were actually using analog sensors as old as the Korean War to determine, sort of the full battlefield. So that digital revolution happened very quickly. I was part of that, worked in Korea for a bit, deploying UAVs, later in Germany, and have essentially came to Boston for a bit of grad school time, and then after grad school, ended up in Washington, D.C. post 9/11. Worked at Booz Allen for 5 years, went to a startup that had a unicorn IPO called Digital Globe. They're now called Maxar. So if you look at your phone and see your house and wonder how that image was taken, we at Digital Globe were the company that was taking that and actually selling pixels to also create, sort of very complex road networks throughout the globe. From there, went to Fidelity, and I always tease for those of you that in Boston about Fidelity being essentially one of this, small startups, family-run, family-owned here in Boston with a big tech budget, and started writing in individual checks as an angel investor, and realized my calling back to the problem I want to solve was really, basically the challenge around food and hunger for a global perspective. And then the job with LEAPS opened up, and I'm really happy to join the team here. And I've been calling Boston home here for about 12 years. So that's the longer story of a nonlinear connection of a lot of digital, a lot of remote sensing, both terrestrial and aerial, and then also sort of the deep family business inside of ag. So stepping into Leaps, I'd love to share what we think about Leaps. We are the venture organization for Bayer, and it's really a commitment for impact investing. We really think about this as a paradigm shift around the really big leaps, the really large challenges that humanity faces. So we're organized not as a traditional corporate venture organization, but rather looking for these large step changes and finding ways to catalyze this innovation. We are generally broken up into a crop science and also consumer health and pharma business. So there's 3 investors on either side of that thesis, and you'll see that they actually overlap quite nicely. So when we think about building and collaborating with businesses, we're willing to go very early stage and actually participate in the co-founding of businesses if it's a tech first. Seed investments, think of $500,000 to $1 million checks. Typically there's post-revenue, but we've certainly entered in scenarios where that's a debt note on a pre-revenue basis, and all the way through Series B and C and further on. We typically like to participate as a board member. We think about this as commitment and collaboration with the business, and Leaps as the venture organization has that commitment back to the company to really think about providing the foundation and the access to the Bayer network, but also sort of our complex network and the ecosystem within the ag larger sector globally. So we do kind of think about this in sort of 2 different axes, the innovation aspect and the technology risk. We are mandated and actually asked routinely to stretch the thinking of our R&D organizations. We work very closely with our crop science and strategy brethren and in that group, but we really think about how to stretch our colleagues beyond their typical R&D portfolio, and that really is a focus on sustainability these days. We'll talk about that in a bit. I love the moniker, and it's something that we actually hold very clear: health for all, hunger for none. So that's really a guiding principle for how we think about our investments. Relatively, we're a small team. We do rely quite a bit on our treasury, audit, finance, legal colleagues throughout Germany and the United States. But when it comes down to investments and the actual execution, it's a really small team of 6 investors that run the process along with our boss, Jürgen. So Jürgen directly reports to the CEO of Bayer. He's located in Switzerland. And the rest of us on the investment side are here in the U.S. and our colleagues that help on communication and branding and all the other aspects, are essentially spread throughout the globe. So we were doing this digital dispersed and decentralized workflow even before it became common in March. I'll spend up just a bit here because I want to get to kind of the core of the portfolio. On the healthcare side, if we think about our 10 leaps, and that's what we think about these 10 large steps for humanity, it's everything from curing genetic diseases and reverse autoimmune diseases, the lost tissue functions, and look, the prevent and cure cancer bucket unto itself is a massive undertaking for any organization. But we think about that as mostly symptomatic therapies in the past, and now we're thinking about preventions and into cures. And so, there's an example of some of the portfolio at the very bottom, everything from Blue Lock Humas, more recent. I think Metagenome has a great story as well. So,
so excuse me, Ryan. Yep. I don't think you're showing slides if you're thinking about it. I don't think you hit show.
Oh, I was presenting prior to that. I am so sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to jump in.
Thank you for the interruption.
Yep.
It's great. So hopefully that's a little bit more clear.
Yep, we got them.
Wonderful. Slides are a horrible crutch anyways, I got to tell you. So the 10 leaps here on the left, hopefully that breaks that out. The cure genetic diseases all the way through transformational business models. I'll let you sort of put your eyes on that. And like I said, curing cancer, regenerative loss of tissue function, these are big step changes, on the health and pharma side of the business. So advancing sort of the crop science aspect of it, I'll say, Really interesting as I came on board is to understand how the business and specifically Leap's thought about the reduction of the environmental impact of agriculture, which is near and dear for me, having lived in Minnesota as a kid, Colorado as a teenager, and then globally, essentially as a global citizen. We know that this is really about for more to better, and so that sustainable protein supplies is a nice caveat into that as well. The insect-borne disease and infestations have a close tie back into ag. And lastly, this transformational digital business models. I think about that as a really functional way to think about digital is the most efficient way, for example, to amplify and accelerate change, but digital is not the function that we're trying to invest in. It's actually the ultimate impact. So this 21st century focus on sustainable agriculture and better food is clearly where we're focused. You'll hear more about that from Steve and Heather. I'm going to bypass this one, but suffice to say, there's a lot of technology platforms out there, and so what we like to do is make sure that we're investing in the global leader in each of the platforms that we see as definitive, but also connect those platforms throughout the ecosystem. I think my jumping off point before I hand this over to Heather is that Leaps really sits at this nexus between health and agriculture. And so we do see a very nice overlap where, there's obviously CRISPR is a great example, but there are distinct technologies that are novel that have technology risk, but when they're put into the market, when they provide the developmental impact, they do have asymmetric and very important levers of change within agriculture, which obviously is a symbiotic circle back to health. So as we think about the Arvinus or the Join investments, Apollo is a great example for smallholder, and other investments that have ultimate bottom line financial impacts. But I think for our general thesis is we know that this ultimately has a big impact for essentially humanity at large. So I feel like I've done quite a bit of talking, some with slides, apparently a few without, but they were the more unimportant ones, probably uninspiring, so that's good. Happy to take a few questions or essentially pass the mic to Heather if that makes sense from a time basis. With that, Heather, I'll stop sharing and I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think you're still sharing, Ryan.
Yep, I'm working on it.
Oh, okay.
It's there we go.
There we go. All right. I have also used the crutch of a few slides. So while I pull those up, I'll introduce myself. So there we go. Hello, everyone. My name's Heather. I've been at Pairwise for just over 2 years. All of us are new to Pairwise because Pairwise is less than 3 years old. I come to Pairwise from CPG, so from food, and I got into food through nutrition. Well, I probably got into food because my mom was a horrible cook, but academically through nutrition, and then I segued into more of a food processing, protein engineering standpoint. And I have run R&D teams, operations teams. I ran a couple plants in my career, but then I made a pivot, went back to B school and went on the business side where I really focused on innovation platforms for big companies and developing consumer insights and strategies to target white space opportunities and big growth opportunities for food companies. Most of my time has been spent in animal ag products, so a lot of meat and cheese. So happy to talk about dairy or any pairings that you want to have with the beverage that you're enjoying right now. Let me know. But for the next couple minutes, we're going to be talking about produce. So, which is a nice foray because it's great for me to get back to my roots. One of the reasons that I did come to Pairwise was to go back to my roots and really try to make a difference through nutrition. And this is This is a core area and a focus of Pairwise. So I think we're all aware, but just a couple of statistics for you guys that in the United States, we have a bit of a problem with nutrition, specifically overnutrition. About 60% of us are overweight or obese. That's, just for frame of reference, that's over 180 million people in this country alone. And what's really startling for me, because I have a child, is that the kids' rate of obesity has more than tripled since 1970. So there's about 1 in 5 kids today, or actually in 2016, are obese, and 1 in 3 are overweight or obese. So it's a problem that we really need to focus on. It's that nice intersection of ag and health that Ryan was talking about. So Americans are eating about 450 more calories today than they did in 1970. Most of that fats, oils, grains, sugars, so a lot of carbohydrates. What you didn't hear me say was fruits and vegetables. So as a share of plate, significantly fewer fruits and vegetables make up our diet and our dinner. And so what we see is that less than 10% of us are, we're getting less than 10% of our calories from produce nowadays. Not only that, but less than 10% of us are getting the recommended daily allowance of fruits and vegetables. It's pretty startling. Another statistic that's pretty interesting is that we as Americans, we love novelty and new, and yet only 3% of innovation on a yearly basis is in the produce department. So, I mean, you can just think out loud how many cookies you can name that have M&Ms in them, that have just launched this year, and how many new chip flavors. Who needs a dill pickled chip and a crab flavored chip? But yet they're there, and they're coming out, on a weekly basis. But yet only 3% of innovation is happening in the produce department. So Pairwise is on a mission. We're pretty passionate about trying to build a healthier world through fruits and vegetables. We want people to find their way to healthy eating and a higher quality of life. So that's who we are. So this is where the technology kicks in. So Pairwise holds some exclusive licenses from Harvard and MGH on base editing and high fidelity CRISPR enzymes. And as we discussed, we're developing products for consumers. So this may raise a question in your mind, or at least you can draw some parallels between what happened in the GMO world and the GMO space, and how that influenced consumer sentiment or drove consumers away. So as you might imagine, there are many folks out there who are working to understand how consumers are going to, how they're going to work to understand, adopt, appreciate gene editing in the food space. And we're no exception. We're keenly engaged in this space, not only with work that other people are doing, but work that we're actively doing. And that's something that you guys see in front of you. So we did a small body of work at the end of last year to try to understand how consumers currently view CRISPR, gene editing, and then specifically gene editing in the food space, and then Pairwise and its mission and how we're going to be adopting that technology. And so this is a small study, about 300 consumers, and we shared a bit about gene editing, our mission, and the key takeaway basically is that 3/4, contrary to public opinion, because I think a lot of people are very concerned, especially those who have been in the bioag space before gene editing, which was not me, but we're really concerned that gene editing would be viewed the same as GMO. And our research would say that that's not the case. How you ask the questions and how you inform the consumer has a lot to do with it, but 3/4 of consumers are open, either positive or neutral to the technology. Not only this, but those that are positive or do Q positive, what you see in the top box here is that a lot of them see positives related to food or the incorporation of the technology in the food space, better quality, more access, etc. That's really, it's not just health. It's not just, yes, it's okay to solve blood diseases. No, it's okay in my food system. And that's really positive. So when we introduced Pairwise in our mission to build a healthier world through fruits and vegetables, and the incorporation of the technology to allow people to consume on their terms, not to ask people to change their behavior, but to use and employ the technology to meet consumers where they are. You'll see some of the bubbles, some of the verbatim responses here in the blue bubbles. It's again very positive. What we see is that consumers cue a lot of interest in wanting to learn more, not only about Pairwise and our mission, but our products. And that's really positive because after all, that is our mission, right? It's to meet them where they are with new products. And the fact that they're interested in them is extremely positive. We particularly like the one on the top right that says that we're a company of the future. We also like to think so. So what I'd like to do is now take a breath and show you how our mission and this research is informing our product strategy. So Pairwise is operating in 3 platform areas, specifically stone fruit, berries, and vegetables. And this is a nice, healthy mix of a long-term approach to development and revenue, and then a midterm and a short-term. And I'm going to speak to one of our initiatives in the shorter-term space, which is veg. I don't know if you got the hint that behind me that I do support the vegetable category at Pairwise, and I'm going to tell you what we expect to have as our first product launch in 2022. So I'd like to introduce you guys to Veriti. Veriti is a super green coming to you in a diverse range of colors, flavors, textures, leaf shapes, all with roots in Brussels sprouts and cauliflower. However, it has a mild flavor and supple texture. And we're going to be delivering that lettuce-like eating experience that you would expect. I mean, I know we all feel like we have to eat kale, and it's pretty nutritious. But I prefer not to have to massage my leafy greens before I put them in my salad bowl or my couscous. So this is a product that delivers that nutrition, but without that need to compromise on texture. So we are using gene editing to make this product have that flavor profile that that is more consistent with a lettuce. The texture and the variety is inherent in the product itself. The natural diversity of these leafy greens, these brassica leafy greens, is tremendous. So that comes to you from nature, but what's coming to you from gene editing and Pairwise is the modulation of the flavor. Some of these products can taste, I mean, if you think about a Brussels sprout or a broccoli, some of them can taste somewhat bitter and have some characteristics that aren't preferred in a mainstream salad or with a mainstream consumer. We're trying to make these very flavorful products more vanilla because vanilla is mass consumer and more approachable, and yet we have all of those superfood nutrition. So this is our first go-to-market. Our go-to-market key points that we're still working on because it's a 22 launch, but it's a premium seed with superior agronomics. Brassica just tends to have those somewhat innately. It also has that regenerative agriculture bent to it, being a brassica, which is a nice favorable shine to some sustainability messaging that we can have. It has superior COGS or processability. And again, I already mentioned the benefits to the consumer. So we've done a lot of work in this space, and you might say that the leafy greens are pretty developed. It is one of the largest produce categories in the supermarket. It has over 90% household penetration, very brand heavy. A lot of people play in this space. However, over 50% of the consumers are bored. They don't like what's currently offered. And not only that, but as we migrate toward healthy greens or more nutritious super greens, they find the offerings less than compelling. And so we feel like there's a play here. We're pretty interested and excited to bring this to consumers. We're in a place in the development process where we're getting feedback from the market. You guys are part of that. So welcome to our feedback tour. We appreciate it. We started a bit of a press junket lately. I hope you guys have seen a bit about Pairwise and our leafy green launch. If you haven't, please take a peek in Food Dive, or The Spoon lately has had a couple press articles with this product. And we look forward to talking about where we're going to launch it. COVID has thrown a bit of a wrench in that right now. A lot of consumers have changed their purchasing behaviors as of late. You know, being that food service is really hit hard, cafeterias are closed. It's estimated that 30% of restaurants may not come back, and yet retail is gangbusters. So as we look to launch and figure out exactly what our sales channel strategy is, we hope that COVID subsides by 2022 and we'll be able to go into the market in a channel that makes sense. So that's Pairwise. I'd be happy to answer any questions or turn it over to the next speaker.
Hey, Heather, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, this is Anthony Randolph. I find this really fascinating. I see this huge push for what you're saying as far as offering new varieties with new flavors and textures that are appealing to the customer. What is shelf stability? What does that look like for a crop such as this? Because I know from my experience farming and being at the market and having all these different varieties, we'd see a lot of customers burn both in retail and at the market with varieties that are not shelf stable, especially for parents. If it goes bad within a few days, they often never buy that again. So I was just curious on the stability of that.
Sure. Yeah, so current leafy greens, packaged leafy greens, target around a 14 to 17 day shelf life, and we fall well within that. In fact, we feel with some additional packaging work, we can probably get beyond that, but we're well within the industry standard for shelf life for packaged greens. It is a fresh product. It's not a shelf stable.
Yeah. And is that something that y'all are interested in as well, as far as gene editing to prolong the shelf stability? Because I've been on the retail end of it as well, and a lot of times we would not buy certain produce that we knew would not last for a certain period of time if we weren't able to push it, especially if it's new. Obviously, we're testing it out, seeing how it does. So are y'all gene editing for that specifically in mind too?
Absolutely. Yes, it is, you know, especially for food waste efforts as well. One of the key reasons that people don't buy produce is because they forget about it, they don't use it, and they throw it away. You know, that is, even if it makes it past the retailer waste point that you're making here. So yeah, a tremendous amount, more than 50% for some product categories, leafy greens being one of them, is actually harvested and does not actually make it on a plate. So yes, that is absolutely an area that we're looking at, not only in leafy greens, but across the 3 product categories that I mentioned earlier. Shelf life is, and extending shelf life, not only shelf life, but then availability too.
And that's great. And sorry, I'm not trying to override this whole discussion, but I'm just really curious about all this. So I know with the schools being out currently and kind of this intermittent period, do y'all have any interest in working with the public sector, with school cafeterias? Because I mean, that's really where it starts, when we would have kids try some of these new and interesting produce varieties or heirloom varieties, even whatnot that they haven't seen before. A lot of times if they get into it at that early age, they actually influence the parents. And if the parents have kids that are excited about it, of course they're going to buy it way more often.
Yeah, yes, agree with that 100%. In fact, some studies estimate that parents have to introduce a vegetable, specifically a vegetable, to kids more than 7 times before them to actually take it up and start to eat it. I know from personal experience that's the case in my family. So yeah, we are working with Food Corps. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of them, but they're an arm of AmeriCorps, and that's exactly what they do. Is they focus on school lunch programs and introducing experiential learning for kids with vegetables. And so we're partnering with them. They have an actual arm in the state of North Carolina, which is where Pairwise is based, and we're looking to figure out how to get our greens when they're available into their program to introduce them to high nutrition greens as a subject area in North Carolina, and then hopefully national. AmeriCorps is national, but they do have a specific arm in the state as well.
Fantastic.
So I think
yeah.
that's a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I know everybody else has questions too, so I appreciate you taking the time to answer that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do have quite a few questions in the chat. Al, do you want to save these for the end, or should we do them now?
Yeah. Well, I'll turn that over to Ryan. I think we want to make sure we get through New Leaf as well here.
All right,
Yeah,
and
I
if
think
you
that's a
don't
great
need to
idea.
ask your question at this point, I have shared the emails in our chat if you wanted to catch up with anyone after, and I will do so again at the end. So just so everyone knows.
Perfect. Thanks, Meredith. I think we'll just pass the microphone over to Steve, and we've got some time to chat about New Leaf Symbiotics.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Heather, that was really great talk. I'm going to tell you a little bit about New Leaf Symbiotics and my background, and I'm also going to use a crutch and share a screen since I knew everybody else was going to do that. So let's see if we can bring it up. So hopefully you're able to see my screen now. Are you seeing the screen?
Not yet.
All right, let's try this.
Very good.
Yep.
Okay, good. So actually, I recognize a few of you. This is my first time to this group, but Slavicia, nice to see you. Sharon, Joe Schmidt, Barry. So a number of familiar faces to me. My background's actually private equity, and I started New Leaf Symbiotics with a colleague about 7 years ago. And I actually live in Boston. I set the company up in St. Louis, and I'm currently in Camden, Maine. So spread out geographically. And there's a reason for that, but I won't go into it all now. New Leaf is 7 years old. We have 35 employees. We've had 4 rounds of funding, a total of about $75 million. And we are in the biological space. We are focused on biologicals for agriculture. And let me see if we can advance the slides here. This is the management team. I'm the CEO. I started out as the CFO, and my colleague Tom Larita left at the beginning of 2020. And you may know some of these people. In fact, I think 4 out of the 7 of us came from either Monsanto or Bayer. So I'm assuming there's some recollection of a few of them. We have a great team, really focused on using science and all the tools to develop biologicals for agriculture. And I go to the next slide. We are working with something called methylotrophs. We now call them M-trophs, just to make it a little bit simpler. They're unique in the plant microbiome. They're natural, they're ubiquitous. We have never found a plant that does not have methylotrophs on them. And you can see in the first slide, the first picture on the left, this is a soybean leaf imprinted on a selective media. So it brings out all of the M-trophs, and you can see they're actually completely covering the leaf. They also are in the rhizosphere on the roots, and they're endophytic, they're inside the plant. So the M-trophs are everywhere on a plant, and they use methanol as their food source. And methanol is a byproduct of plant metabolism. So the plant gives off methanol, the methylotrophs use the methanol, so there's no energy cost to the plant. And while there are billions and billions of microbes in the plant microbiome, we are focusing on one class of microbes, just the methotrophs. So we think that's an advantage. We believe we are mining a very rich vein, and this has been the strategy, as Sharon can tell you, from day one. And we, at this point, have well over 100 patents that we filed. We have over 12,000 strains of the methotrophs in our library. And we have found amazing things from all of the trials that we've done, from increasing yield to also providing protection from insects and disease. And these are things that went way beyond what we expected when we first started the company. So we believe that we own this space. Nobody else is working on methotrophs the way New Leaf is. And that's the advantage of being, we say we're an inch wide and a mile deep. That's our area of expertise. We don't know a lot about all the other microbes that are in the plant microbiome, but we definitely know methotrophs. So what have we done? We've created something called a prescriptive biologics knowledge base, or PBK. And we've sequenced the genomes of all the strains that are in our library. We put them into this PBK system, and using the phenotype data that we get back from the field and the genomics that we have on the strains, we are able to make predictions about which strains are likely to be most effective with a particular crop to solve a particular problem or to increase yield, whatever it is we're trying to do. And so this has become the engine for doing the science and the analysis behind our approach. And it makes a big difference that we're working with one class of microbes, because we can really be experts on how to manufacture them, how to use this PBK system to figure out which are the best strains to take to the field to do trials on. So this is just a little bit about the science. So what are we doing now as a company? We have 3 tracks. We are using naturally occurring methotrophs that are found in nature, and as a biostimulant. We are finding a strain that works on corn, or works on soy, and it does not require EPA approval since we're selling it as a biostimulant, and we're doing that today. Those are in the market, and we're selling a corn product, a soy product, and a peanut product for starters. There's absolutely no reason that we couldn't have products for everything, because the methotrophs are on everything. So that's high value vegetables, it's horticulture, it's everywhere. But as a small company, we have to focus. Track 2 is biocontrol. This is where we are making claims of insecticidal claims, pesticidal, fungicidal claims, and this does require EPA registration. I'll show you some photos of some work we've done here. This is the medium term. It's going to take us a little longer. We're not selling anything yet in the biocontrol area. And the longer term is working with Join Bio. I think many of you are probably familiar with Join. These are the bioengineered strains, and we are providing the methotrophs, the mtrophs, to Join, and Join is doing the development and the engineering. So think of it as New Leaf is providing the chassis, and Join is providing the payload for that chassis. And together, we think this is a partnership that has tremendous upside potential. But realistically, this is the longer term of the 3 tracks that we're on. Maybe the largest, but certainly the longest term. So those are the 3 areas that we are working in. Just a couple pictures. This shows you on track 1 where we're as a biostimulant. You can see the soybean, and photo shows the differences with Terrasim as the brand name of our product. a 4.6 bushel per acre increase. That came down a little bit from because of last year where it was a tough year for biostimulants, to about 4 bushels per acre. But without Terrasym, it's not nearly as strong. And you can see on track 2 with wheat, without Terrasym and with Terrasym, there's a significant difference. So this is what we're working on. We're trying to use something that's found in nature that can replace or supplement or at least reduce the amount of chemicals that are going into the environment. And so we think it's got a huge potential, a huge upside. The next photo shows corn rootworm is one of the biggest pests that farmers are dealing with in the Midwest. And you can see on the picture with the untraded corn seed without Terrasym and with Terrasym, and with the traded, the same thing. And on average, we're getting at least 11 bushels per acre increase in yield. And this year, we're going to have a huge amount of data coming back. But we've done enough over the last 5 years to know that we've got a biostimulant that really does work and has tremendous potential. So that's a little bit about New Leaf. Obviously, I could spend a lot of time. I don't want to do that. I mentioned that we had 4 rounds of capital. These are our investors. Monsanto invested in Al Bayer through that acquisition, but S2G, Koch Industries came in recently, along with Pangea, Rockport Capital, Otter Capital, and Open Prairie. We have a new investor that should be coming in within a week or 2. So that's kind of the New Leaf story. And I'm also happy to take questions, or whether you want to open this up to everybody now, and then we can all take questions. Might be the best way to do it.
I can go through some of the questions we've already received, just in the order that they've come in, if that works for everyone.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing so that we can.
All right.
People. Okay.
So the first few are for Heather, just because they came in during her talk. So the first one is from John Salmaron. How much consumer market research and testing have you done into the variety product?
We've done 2 rounds of work, and we're getting ready to field, all in retail, in the retail space, and we're getting ready to field a study about the consumer space for variety in the food service sector before the end of the year.
And then I might just rapid fire these at you because they've already come in. So Emily Indriolo, hopefully I did not mispronounce that, said, with the less typical mustard taste, are these brassicum more susceptible to insect pests? That flavor comes from compounds to prevent herbivory.
Yes. So the wonderful thing about the edit that we're doing is it does not actually decrease the amount of glucosinolates in the product. So no, we don't expect to have increased pest pressure for these products.
All right, and then Yasmin Cardoza asks, is there any concern that improving palatability might, I guess this is kind of the same question, but improving palatability might increase pest incidences?
Yeah, it's a concern, and the reason that we went the strategy that we did is because not only does it defend against pests, but it has also had some anti-cancer properties elevated for glucosinolates, and so we tried to employ a strategy that didn't depress the total composition in the product.
Perfect. And then these 2 are aimed at Steve. So the first one's from Grace MU, who asks, are M-troughs affected by pesticidal use and or chemical pest management techniques?
We do a lot of testing to make sure that there's compatibility. And at this point, we find that in very minimal cases do we have an issue. It tends to be compatible with, in fact, a number of our products are going to be a combination, because we think a number of manufacturers will want to slowly transition from what they're currently using to our products. So having that compatibility is really important, and we found that, in fact, we do have it.
All right. Sharon Burberg asks, how are M-troughs delivered to the crops?
Multiple ways. Our preferred way is a seed treatment because that's typically easy to do and it uses the smallest number of methotrophs. We also do it in furrow. We can do foliar, and we're also looking at planter box. So there really are, depending on what we're trying to do, is be compatible with what the farmer's already doing and not expect them to do something new. So we're able to put it on in multiple different ways.
All right, and the last one I have in this chat is from Louis Marquez, which asks, are those leaf prints of M-troughs from treated plants or naturally occurring? Is that abundance common in all plants, or is that exclusive of soybean?
So those were naturally occurring. It is common in all plants. And the fact is, obviously, by the way, these M-troughs are all pink in color, which is why you'll see a lot of pink on our website or anywhere else in our photos. By putting the imprint on a selective media, we can allow it to just grow the M-troughs. And so you actually see that on the image. But in fact, they're on every leaf. We've never found a plant that doesn't have the M-troughs on the leaf surface. You just don't see them. But the selective media brings that out, and the only thing that grows would be the M-troughs in that scenario, which is why you see it that way.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. And another one for Heather just came in from Tim Olmasov, which asks, is Iridia a product of gene editing of one gene, single nucleotide change? What exactly is it going on there?
Yeah, so it is a deletion, and it's in multiple orthologs. So one gene with a lot of different copies in it, unfortunately. But yeah, hope that answers the question.
All right. I'm loving the amount of questions coming in. Mark Edge for Steve, is it known how the M-troughs are helping stimulate the yield benefits, and what is the mode of action?
Yeah, we do, and we've done a lot of work there. It gets into a lot of different things, but basically it stimulates the plant. It increases the root uptake of nutrients that the plant needs, and it also provides well, a lot of benefits through that. And then the other half of that question is, well, what about where we're talking about biocontrol, because that's a whole different mechanism. And there we found there are multiple modes of interaction, but it's mostly a induced systemic response from the plant. So we thought it would be a simple answer, and over the years we found it's actually more complex. But nutrient uptake is probably the main reason for increasing the yield.
All right. Another one for you, Steve, from Aveen. Oh, there we go. Aveen Al-Khatib, which asks, are there stability changes with M-troughs? Does it need special packaging and/or handling?
There are always challenges. I mean, I'm going to say that. What we do is we make the product through a fermentation, and then we spray dry it to get it into a powder. And once it's in a powder, then it's dormant. And then it's shelf stable, and we can keep it with minimal degradation once it's dry. When you apply it to a seed, then you have another shelf life that you need to worry about, and we're in the process of trying to increase that. But the short answer is, yeah, it's always an issue, and we're continuing to work on a number of techniques to extend the life of the strains when they're either on the seed or even in the powder form.
All right, back to Heather from, it's either Paul Chomet or Paul Chomet, I apologize. Is the seed of the Verity product a hybrid variety, and is Pairwise worried about control of the edit?
Yes, of course. Yeah, so we do clearly have an IP strategy to protect it, but yeah, we are still going through the strategy on how to best manage the IP related to it. Firstly, it'll probably be through partnership. So we're not going to go through a seed distributor as an example. So it would be with discrete vendors that we partner with to sell the seed. So that's one, sales approach that we're taking to control the IP. If we hybrid or how we hybrid, it is in talk, but we haven't settled yet if it's going to be OP or hybrid.
So,
All right, and then I'm gonna
Meredith, before we go, I just wanted to,
yeah.
if we're getting to the top of the hour, I just wanted to say, we can keep going. Whoever is interested can stick around. But I want to just take the opportunity to thank everybody for joining in, thank our panel, and see if Ryan wants to put any wrap-up comments in. And then again, anybody who wants to stick around, if Steve and Ryan and Heather are willing to, that's fine.
Sure.
No, I just want to express my gratitude to Heather and Steve collectively for the chat today. Obviously, there's more questions. I would also say, given the scientific depth of the audience, if you or your colleagues and friends are starting a new company or have technology that you feel is underutilized, that needs to get to the market and want to go through that startup, that's the crux, right? So how do we make that big leap, for humanity? So would love to have that conversation if you feel as though there's novel technology that hasn't yet hit the market. But I'll hand it back to you guys to moderate the rest of this. I'll drop off at some point. I have little ones that are hungry, so I'm going to have to go feed some little kids, but I'll stick around as long as I can.
All right. It does look like what we have left in the chat is 2 more for Steve, so we'll see if anyone else has anything to add. But Louis Marquez asks, how diverse is the population of M-troughs on one leaf, and how many species or how many individuals, unique isolates of each species?
Wow, you guys are asking good questions, tough questions. It really depends on what plant you're talking about. I would say, and I probably want to check with some of our scientists, but I think they would say it's in the order of hundreds, not thousands, but hundreds on one plant of different strains.
All right, and then one last one from Volker Mittendorf. Do you monitor impact on the microbiome composition and taxonomic abundance due to the supplemented M-trough? If it's hard to hear it, I've also written in chat.
I'm just trying to understand the question. I guess the answer is no. I think the answer to your question is no, but if you really want to follow up, I'll put you in touch with one of our scientists.
Yeah, one thing I would like to encourage everybody to do is this has started out as a networking event and a conversation starter. We've started a lot of conversations. This is the most interactive virtual session that we've had yet. So I really appreciate you guys for coming in to participate, and for those of you who've come in to join in, spread the word. Keep an eye out for the next one. And again, if there are topics that you want to hear about, please let me know. There were a couple that have come in, but we had to kind of juggle some things around a little bit. So like I said, this has been quite useful. Keep those suggestions coming in, and we're getting a schedule up for basically over the course of the next several months. The other thing I will tell you is that we're going to probably be adjusting the time a bit more. So we may be going a bit earlier in the day to accommodate Europe, and maybe a bit later in the day to get closer to happy hour time for the West Coast of the US. Just we're exploring all these different types of options. Experimentation is, well, it's not only a big thing that Bayer does, but it's fun. So we're trying out some different things.
Great. Well, I think that is all of the questions we have, but thank you everyone for coming.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody. And again, reach out whenever you would like to come out, have any questions or comments, ideas for next AgConnect, please get back to us and connect on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Opportunity.
Thanks, guys.
Nice to meet you.
Steve, Heather, Al, thank you very much.